Encounters. Steadily, the eyesore palace rose on Meadside Farm. 1 story, 2, then 3, bedecked with pillars, porches, dormers, trellises, gingerbread trim, the work supervised by fancy architects from Boston, the lumber and hardware shipped in by train. Will Howe had never seen his father so thoroughly annoyed. "A man's a fool," insisted Luther. "The finest timber in the world growing right here under his nose. The finest workmen for 100 miles right in his own backyard." For Hiram Mead persisted in hiring his newfound kin to do the work. "Those Meads can't tell a hammer from a saw," Luther insisted. "The place will never stand." Will Howe had never heard such conversation among his kin as erupted now about a genuine mansion of ill repute, smack in the middle of Meadside Farm, with Madame Rosalind O'Doul at the door. When Will asked his mother what this meant, she merely scowled and fed him extra castor oil. It was a mansion all right, with indoor plumbing throughout, 16 spacious rooms, of requirements precise, built onto the old stone house to be retained as a summer kitchen. A carriage house, too, for the buggy and sleigh, with a compartment for the touring car. And in place of the old pump house, a genuine wishing well, what next, wondered Luther Howe, a drawbridge and a moat? Even Rebecca Howe, dismayed at the extravagance of Hiram Mead, was moved to express a critical thought. "How much better it would have been," she said, "had Nathaniel not gone away." This was the first time Will Howe remembered hearing his grandmother speak of Nathaniel Mead, and it would be a very long time yet before he understood what she meant. For now it was enough to consider the existence of the girl. Pausing in his work on the breaches in the wall, Will might see her, Victoria Mead, alone in the meadow, twirling in a sea of Queen Anne's lace, gathering wildflowers, plucking fiddleheads to strew an invisible path. He would watch her amble down to the pond to stir her watery reflection with a stick, to listen for frogs or speak to the geese. Will thought he might like to follow, to hear what she said to the birds, to show her where to find fish or to catch some pollywogs. Watching her shield her eyes and lift her gaze to the sky, he wondered what shapes she saw in the clouds. Did she see galleons and ponies and flocks of sheep, or other things beyond a country boy's imagination? She was like a girl in a storybook that his mother might read to him by the fire. Even though he could see her clearly, hear the willows rustle as she moved by, she was very far away. One day, she wandered farther, all the way down to the falls. On this day, Will ventured to follow because he was afraid. From the shelter of the sawmill, he watched her, approaching the falls from the other side. Reaching the bank above the ledge where the pond began its spill, she moved out toward the edge. "Be careful," Will wanted to warn her. "Be careful, don't fall in." But she went no farther, watching, and he held back, thinking as he watched over her. The falls were beautiful in any season, painting rainbows over the rocks. This beauty was compelling, almost invitation. But while everyone thrilled at the sight of the falls, few ever ventured in. This spring, however, Will had dared the crossing from Howside to Meadside alone. While others before him had made the journey, he had witnessed such feats himself. No one had tried so young, and never, he knew, without help. Sneaking out early, no one to stop him, he had made his passage at dawn. Reaching the falls before the stars had faded, he went in fully clothed, without thought. Out onto the rocky ledge he moved, bracing against the flow, to his ankles, his knees, his waist, unimaginably cold in the pale end of night. And then, remembering what he had seen and heard, he knelt, icy water beating his face, made the calculation, took the moment, and plunged through Center Falls. In a prayer, He found the hidden chamber, his face and chest pressing icy rock. Only a moment, however, could he rest in the dark, the falls deafening at his back, and then he must move quickly before cold overtook him, numb fingers searching with no misstep, defying the fear. Heedless of the danger of the bottomless pool at the base of the falls, where he could be sucked down, spinning forever, never to be heard from again. Out through the icy veil he surged breathless, feet and hands leaden, and inching over black, mossy rocks, he finished the impossible journey in the pink morning light, back to safety on the bank. An eternity, and he lay gasping in the grass, more terrified than when he had begun. How foolish to have risked his life in this way, no help nearby, no strong backs, no ropes. He was a child, alone, a foolish boy. Cold tears filled his eyes. He longed for the comfort of his mother's hearth, his father's hand on his shoulder. He longed to hear his grandmother's voice, to sit at her feet, his head against her knee. It was there Will remembered at this moment, wiping his eyes with his fist. There he had lain shivering, foolish, weeping in the grass, just where Victoria Meade stood now, watching the water swirl against the bank. He watched as she took courage, brushing her hair from her face, moving along the bank in a rainbow of mist, down toward the edge. He watched, his heart in his throat, praying she would not dare too far. Suddenly she stopped, squinting in thought, and slowly moved back from the edge. For a moment longer she stood, closing her eyes, turning her damp face to the sun, and then slowly she went away. After all the trouble and expense, the Meads never came out to stay. There would be but one brief blaze of glory at Meade Mansion in Old Bell Falls. In December of 1912, when done up like an English lord, Hiram Meade once again blew into town. Streaking across fresh fallen snow they came, down Cooper's Road and onto Main Street, bells a-jingle, in a 2-horse sleigh. Breathing up all the air, Hiram Meade sat driving a magnificent pair of chestnut Morgans under the reins, with red-haired Rosalind, not quite a proper English lady, swathed in snow-white fur, nestled in the seat behind, with Victoria, chafed cheeks framed in the generous hood of her red velvet cape, hands buried in her grey fur muff. Will Howe, in town for molasses, nearly fell off his horse at the sight. On through December the Hiram Meads were in residence with their fancy needs, a little this, a little that, ordered, delivered from the general store. Of course, the meagre resources of Old Bell Falls could never meet all the needs, and for weeks the furnishings, decorations, and supplies travelled packed in straw. The Cooper's Glen station out to Meadside by sled, long wagon, and carriage cab. Carpets from Persia, lace curtains and linens from Brussels, china from Limoges, Dutch tiles and vases, Tiffany lamps, crystal, cutlery, silver, brass objects of exotic design, a frail fainting couch in red brocade, 8 elegant Queen Anne armchairs, a dining table, 3 tea tables, 4 chests, 2 armoires, 5 canopy beds, not good sturdy pieces of cherry or oak such as a Howe might produce at the mill, but frivolous designs of walnut and pine fancied up with inlays and lacquers and veneers. And if all this were not enough, there were garlands and tinsel, fireworks from China, and a Chickering grand piano for the parlour. Then, a week before Christmas, the food began to arrive. Sneaking over in the early morning, Will Howe and his brothers watched the ice house and pantry fill with hams and turkeys and geese, and slabs of prime roast beef, seafood, shrimps, lobsters and crabs, fruits and vegetables, tinned meats, round wax-dipped cheeses, tall bottles with fancy labels, shiny tins of exotic treats, tins of sweet chocolate candies, like the ones father might bring home for mother's birthday, so dear, only one piece for each child, and lots of fizzle water. Old Hiram Mead might be a slippery snake, whispered awestruck Timothy Howe, but it sure looks like fizzle water selling is a lot better than farming or working at a mill. The sight of all this splendor, however, was troubling to Tim's brother Will.